Celyn is a Heritage Lottery-funded project in the Black Mountains in southeast Wales. The Landmark Trust is conserving the whole site, a medieval house with associated farm buildings, and is finding a new use for them all. All of the buildings were in serious disrepair, and their failing roof structures pose particular challenges.
Between this trust and the next one.
So I'm the project manager for the Llwyn Celyn project. Been involved here now probably for 4 years. We started on site actually doing the construction work in April last year, almost a year ago to the day in fact. Although there's a scaffold around the building, we didn't necessarily know what exactly we would find. We knew what some of the problems were, and we knew water had been getting through the building, and we expected to find some rotten timber, but we didn't know the full extent of that, obviously. So we've started opening up, and we found rotten valleys, rotten roof rafters, purlins, wind bracing, all sorts of joinery bits and pieces all around the building. And most of this is caused by a lack of maintenance really to the building over many, many years. The house is Grade 1 listed, so that's of the highest importance. As a conservation surveyor, I would want to do as little as possible to the building. I'd want to take away as little as possible of the original structure. So what we've done to the house is really the most conservative repairs that we can do, and trying to emphasise its historic fabric, and so that can be seen for all. But the other buildings around the site, the Beast House is listed Grade 2 and has been used as an agricultural building all its life. And likewise, the cow shed and the threshing barn, they are agricultural buildings. So although we'll conservatively repair them, we won't necessarily put back historic roofing materials.
The tiles from all the roofs had to be stripped in order to gain access to the structure. Repair to the damage caused by rainwater ingress has been achieved by clever use of modern materials and traditional techniques, including the insertion of steel sections.
One of the particular areas that we have a problem is the valley junction between the solar wing and the hall, where we've got a pitched roof joining a vertical gable, and nobody made proper provision for a gutter in there. So we've redesigned that and put a much larger gutter into that. But subsequently all the timber beneath that in various stages of rot, so with extensive joinery repairs in that area. I mean, the roof structure, because of the damage to the timbers, we've involved the services of a structural engineer. So he's been able to design and approve the joints, and in 1 or 2 instances we've had to insert pieces of steel to maintain the strength, but those have been either put in such a way that they could be removed in the future, or so that they can't be seen, and that just depends what part of the building that's in. So his services have been invaluable really to support the carpenters and joiners.
Putting steel sections into a building is not a decision that is taken lightly. Only a skilled conservation engineer can understand the failures in a building such as Llwyn Celyn and design a plan for its repair.
You remember we spoke about the troubled valley caused us all the grief? Well, that's behind you here. And the water just tracked down the principal rafters and decayed the ends, and they were completely rotten at the ends. Quite lucky really, another 5-10 years and I think things would have started falling over, which is why there is steel reinforcement in the principal rafters. Okay. So these are the ones, this truss here is the one that has the steel T-sections let into the top surface of the principal rafter, which you can feel if you stick your hand in here. So up in here you can see the top surface of one of the steel Ts, and that is let into the top of the principal rafter. So the decision in here is to not see any of the steel reinforcement. So this is going to be one of the most impressive rooms in the landmark. It's going to be the sitting room. It's got this beautiful exposed roof. We didn't want to see any of the steel strengthening works, which is why they're hidden into the top surface of the principal rafters. What we have done is sympathetic and compatible with the original. We're not introducing alien materials and changing the load paths, and that's important in historic buildings. We don't always understand exactly the load paths through a historic building. There's lots of degrees of redundancy and lots of secondary load paths that we wouldn't fully understand. So it's important we don't start introducing completely over-engineered, incredibly stiff structures in there. If we'd introduced, steel trusses or massive steel beams in there, stiffness attracts load. We then change the load paths through the structure, and that can be fundamentally damaging to a historic building, because we might solve the problem we're looking at here, but we might generate a problem over here because we've changed the load paths. So it's important that what we do respects the way the structure originally worked.
Originally, this roof would have had a tie-in from this point here right the way across to the other side here. So that's somebody in times gone by has cut that out to provide them with better access around the building. To compensate for the removal of that, we've inserted this tie-in at a higher level, which means the space can still be used. We can walk underneath that, and then we've just left stub ends of timber just to represent where the original tie beam had been.
The removal of the tie beam happened in the middle of the 17th century, when the first floor and chimney were added to the medieval hall, along with access through to the solar wing.
This is the arch brace, and this forms part of the structure to this roof frame. And when we originally came in here and took the ceiling down, this brace was some 8 or 10 inches away from where it should be. So with some careful repairs to the principal rafter and some tying and strapping and jacking of the arch brace, we've managed to pull it back into position, repeg it where it should be, and reinstate the integrity of the roof and give it back its strength.
Wind braces are an integral part of the roof structure at Llwyn Celyn. They stop the roof racking backwards and forwards, but they also have an aesthetic quality. Their repair is particularly evident, with fresh oak sections spliced in where needed, or in some places completely replaced.
What we're trying to do is what we call an honest repair. We're not trying to disguise it, we're not trying to make it look part of the original. So put it in as it would have been originally. It was all bare timber, oak goes yellow as it ages, and so this, in time, these timbers will mellow down. They'll never match the historic timbers, but they will mellow down, and they'll still be visible to everybody. They'll be able to see what repairs we've completed here, rather than trying to disguise it and hide it all. It's been honest and truthful about what we've done here. So behind the roof structure, or between the rafters and these wind braces here, you can see the wood wall slab, and above that we've also got lamb's wool and also a fibreboard on the top face of the rafters, and this all forms the insulation layer. This will be plastered on the inside, and obviously the roofing tiles go over the outside. Also in this area we've got wooden lath, which we've put back in areas between the existing frame, and this will give you the nice undulations of a historic plaster finish, really, those sort of undulations. The roof had got a good quantity of tiles left on it, and in remarkably good condition actually. Early indications were that we perhaps got 75% able to be reclaimed. That hasn't proved to the case actually when we've taken the roof off. We're down to about 50%. But where we've got visible roof areas, so areas that as you approach the site and face the building, we've put back the original roof tiles off the roof. It makes it easier. You haven't got an ageing problem with the roof. You know that roof is already old, but it'll age at the same rate. Whereas if you put new tiles in amongst that, then you'll have ageing differences on that roof, and it may become difficult to maintain into the future. Or parts of it may fail prematurely, and you've still got perfectly good areas of new tiling. The reverse slopes, or the back slopes, have then been covered in new tiles which have come from the local quarry. There are very few quarries quarrying these tiles anyway. So we did early on some petrographic analysis of the tiles to understand better its geological makeup, and we took samples of the tiles from the particular quarry we're now using, and they matched as close as we were ever going to get.
There are many slopes to the roof at Llwyn Celyn, and where they meet they are detailed with a Welsh open valley. Today this is a rarely found feature and poses an interesting challenge for even the most seasoned roofers.
You get to do that type of thing on very rare occasions, and it was something that I was sort of quite keen for myself and for the lads who work for me to give them a go for the experience, really, like so. Right, this is what they call a Welsh open valley. There's no actual lead in the detail. It's actually nowadays it's sort of done with lead or fiberglass or whatever. Obviously years ago they didn't have the luxury of lead and obviously no fiberglass, so they basically they did this in such a way anything sort of falls in there runs down there, and we do try and get them with a little bit of there's the slightest of upturns on it, so that we try and encourage any water that does run down here to sort of work its way down the actual main roof, as opposed to get a huge deluge down the valley itself.
The roof is set out with a series of battens, and the tiles are hung with pegs so that they hang one on top of the other, overlapping from side to side and from top to bottom. This is known as the side lap and the head lap. This ensures that rainwater runs down and wind cannot drive water up underneath them. The roof at Llwyn Celyn is further complicated by the fact that the tiles are in diminishing courses, with the largest at the bottom and the smallest and lightest at the top. This means that the reclaimed tiles need to be carefully sorted for size before they are reused. When the new stone tiles are ordered, the contractors communicate with the quarry to ensure they receive correct amounts of the sizes required.
We were told by the quarry that we start with a 30 inch. 30 inches is the longest that they've got. So we know where we are. We've basically gone from a 30 inch long slate right the way down to a 10 at the top. Okay, so and obviously it'll give a seamless effect. There will be no jumps in the coursing will go, as you'll see, as it goes on up.
Even though we are dealing with an historic roof, modern day building regulations still apply to ensure that it performs correctly. British standards regarding overlaps are based on a building's location and the angle of the pitch of the roof.
Basically, it's the driving rain index, and the area where we are is classed as severe. Everything sort of West Wales and sort of further over, basically along the west coast, Scotland, England, Wales and so forth, is classed as very severe. So then it basically tells us on here, so we're in severe here, so we know the roof pitch is roughly 45 degrees, so that we know, it'll tell us there we're over here. So we know our minimum head lap is 69.
Right, so this is the Beast House. This is going to be an interpretation centre. This building, like the house, has suffered from neglect. It has had some propping and shoring up over its history, but the wall behind me here on the north side had got a terrific bow in it, which was of some considerable concern to the engineer. We've actually now had to take it down to the foundation and rebuild.
Structural problems like this have been resolved in different ways across the Llwyn Celyn site. These conservation dilemmas have been the subject of on-site training for students and professionals.
In an ideal world, we would just be taking a pure conservation approach to every aspect of every project, but there isn't enough money available to do that. So at some point we have to be a little bit pragmatic about our approach. And on this site, the beautiful thing is that we have a cluster of buildings, so we can take a different approach with different buildings. With historic fabric, we have to understand how we've gotten to the point that we've got to now and what we're going to do to make sure we secure that fabric moving forward.
The roof here is going to take stone tiles again, which ties this building in quite nicely with the house. So we'll remove the profile tin sheeting and put stone tiles back onto the roof. So we need to be sure then that the whole of this roof structure is in good order to take the terrific weight of all the stone tiles. And the engineers had an early look at the roof. He's identified one or two additional repairs that we need to do here, Hopefully nothing too major. The whole of the structure has moved south. There are buttresses on the outside of the south face of the wall, which obviously are holding the building up. And there's one tie on this truss on this side here, which, where they should normally act in tension, appears to be acting in compression and has got a banana curve in it. So it's obviously been put under some considerable strain in its lifetime. Right, so this is the threshing barn, and this building is going to be used now as a community use space. The building has in its lifetime been re-roofed. We don't know whether it originally had a stone tile roof, but there's evidence that the ventilation slots have been cut through, so we're pretty certain this roof has been lowered. So it may have had a stone tile roof in the past, but we're going to simply put back a profiled tin roof, insulated so that it makes the space more comfortable in the winter months. Obviously block up the slots with glazing. One of the big problems we have here is that the gable wall on the east side was slipping down the valley, and hence the strapping and kentlage there to hold the wall in and stabilise it. The roof structure is a series of iron frames at the moment. We are in discussion with the engineer as to whether we can have these repaired. There are one or two bolts missing, so it may be that simply by putting the bolts back we reintroduce its integrity. The alternative was to have some new timber scissor trusses made up, but like all these projects we don't want to spend money unnecessarily, so if we can make reuse these frames, then we will do.
The project to save Llwyn Celyn has posed many challenges for the team. The advanced state of decay of all the buildings has meant that no single approach to conservation could be applied. The project team, guided by our structural engineer, were able to weigh up the needs of each building against its end use whilst keeping costs in check. This fluid and informed approach has ensured that the maximum amount of historic fabric has been saved, along with the character of each of the buildings.